Facebook and Twitter are censoring the New York Post story about Joe Biden, Hunter Biden as Burisma. You know, the story that alleges that Joe Biden actually knew more about Burisma and Hunter Biden than he's letting on. And Jack Dorsey even admits that they're censoring it. But I guess that's okay. This is yet another instance of social media companies censoring conservative points of view. If you want to learn more about the actual story, what the content of the New York Post article is, then you can check out the video I made earlier today about that. Right now, I want to talk about the fallout. Specifically, that Twitter and Facebook are under fire from journalists and pundits on both sides for censoring the New York Post report on Hunter Biden. Now, this article points out that the information that the Post was given was leaked from an email of a hard drive of a computer that was left in a repair shop, and that it was given to Rudy Giuliani and to the FBI. If you want to criticize the way the information was obtained, or even if it's true, that's fine. That is completely warranted. Criticism is always warranted. But if you want to then suppress the information because you don't like what it says or you're not sure if it's true, that is an issue. Twitter and Facebook acted fast to censor the report from the New York tabloid, for different reasons. While Twitter said the report violated its policy on hacked materials, Facebook took issue with the facts of the story. Looking first at Facebook, a spokesperson said that the story is eligible to be fact-checked by Facebook's third-party fact-checking partners. But in the meantime, before they could actually fact-check it, we are reducing its distribution on our platform. So in other words, Facebook took a look at this story. They said, we don't know if it's true. So while people are actually determining if it is true, what we're going to do is throttle the reach. We're going to make it so less people can see this story until we've determined if it's true or not. Because, you know, allowing Facebook to determine what's true and what's not could never end badly. And this is a bit unfortunate because Facebook, at least compared to Twitter and other social media platforms, has tended to be fairly good when it comes to free speech. It seems like, however, they're getting worse. Again, if you want to criticize the veracity of the claim, I'm fine with that. But what you shouldn't do is say, until I can prove this wrong, I'm going to make it so no one can see it. And Facebook is kind of doing that. Sure, you can still find it, but the spokesperson said, literally, they are reducing its distribution, meaning they're suppressing it. Twitter, on the other hand, took it one step further. In line with our hacked materials policy, as well as our approach to blocking URLs, we are taking action to block any links to or images of the material in question on Twitter. They were essentially removing or locking anyone who shared information about the New York Post article. Twitter's crackdown, which reportedly included people sharing links to the report publicly and in DMs, and apparently led to some accounts like the Post and Kayleigh McEnany's being locked, who is the White House press secretary, received significant criticism from many media figures, including ones very skeptical of the sourcing of the report. So unlike Facebook, who said we're just going to squash the story, Twitter actually said we're not allowing you to share the story, whether it be publicly on an actual tweet or even a DM. If you're trying to send a message directly to someone, including this article, Twitter apparently didn't even allow that. And they locked out people for trying to do it, again, including the White House press secretary. That's a bit absurd. This is a mainstream news article that we can't even share on social media because they don't like it or because they can't fact check it immediately. It got so bad that Jack Dorsey felt the need to essentially say, yeah, we made a mistake. But he did it in the lamest way possible. He said, our communication around our actions on the New York Post article was not great. And blocking URL sharing via tweet or DM with zero context as to why we're blocking, unacceptable. Which is the epitome of a non-apology. Instead of saying that this shouldn't have happened, what Jack Dorsey said was that it was, quote, not great. And he's not even talking about locking people out or suppressing the story. He's saying the communication was not great. So the action they took was fine, they just should have been more clear on why they were doing it, I suppose. At least that's what I'm gathering from what Jack Dorsey said. Let me reiterate one last time. It is completely acceptable to doubt or to criticize the New York Post report. I think any report that comes out that claims to be a bombshell with information like this should be criticized. That's why it needs to be available. If we can't read it, if we can't see what's included because Twitter and Facebook are blocking it, then how are we supposed to criticize it? That's completely ridiculous. And I know I bring this up a lot, but keep in mind that for years, we were constantly hearing about this Russian collusion narrative, which was essentially based on lies. But that was allowed to run rampant on Facebook, on Twitter, on all of social media, perhaps because it portrayed Trump in a negative light. But this one, because it's, in favor of conservatives, that has to be suppressed and apparently blocked and locked entirely from Twitter. It just astounds me how there are people who are trying to claim there is no censorship whatsoever of conservatives, and then things like this happen, and Jack Dorsey says, well, it wasn't great, and that somehow counts as an apology and proves that censorship didn't occur? I just don't understand this. And I'm not necessarily surprised that Twitter did it, because Twitter is essentially a cesspool of all that is evil. Twitter is a horrible, horrible place. But once again, Facebook tended to be at least a little bit better than the other social media sites. And the fact that they're kind of giving in the same way that Twitter did, that's a little bit disappointing to me. Because I still like Facebook. I don't use Twitter ever, but Facebook is actually still kind of good. At least they were. What do you think? Am I making too much of this, or do you think this is a perfect example of social media censoring conservative points of view? Let me know in the comment section down below. And if you want more people to know about this, go ahead and share this video. Granted, Facebook and Twitter might not like it, it'll probably get suppressed, but you can try it anyway, and I'd really appreciate it. And if you have any questions about anything I've mentioned here, go ahead and check out my sources in the description below. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.